Israel is a land filled with graves of ancient leaders and rabbis, teachers of the Jewish people. But there's one grave that's mysteriously missing. That's the grave of Moses. Why can't you visit the grave of Moses? Let's take a look. Shalom, my friends. This is the Kiva Gersh with Israel in 5, where we give you everything Israel in 5 minutes. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or want to keep the conversation going, please do so below in the comments. You travel around this land from the north to the south, the east to the west. You will eventually, with probably in minutes, come across an ancient grave of some leader, teacher, rabbi of the Jewish people. There's some people who come to Israel just to visit the graves of what we call tzaddikim, righteous individuals. And these graves go back hundreds of years and sometimes even thousands of years. Graves like Rabbi Akiva, Maimonides, and many, many others who we read about in the pages of Jewish text. But there's one grave that's missing. There's one grave that you can't visit, right? Remember, we can also visit graves going back thousands of years ago of Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. So why can't we visit the grave of Moses? Well, there's two good reasons. First of all, it says in the Torah, it says in the Hebrew Bible that the grave of Moses is not known, right? The grave of Moses, from the very beginning, from the time that he was buried, was not a place that was to be known. We'll get back to that in just a moment. And remember also, Moses never came into the land of Israel, right? So he wouldn't be buried in the land of Israel because he never actually stepped foot in the land of Israel, but he did get very close. And we do know that he spent the last days of his life right across from the city of Jericho, in the mountains on the other side of the Jordan Valley, which would be the country of Jordan today. We know the name of that mountain is Mount Nebo, and it had a beautiful view into the land of Israel. We know one of the last things that Moses did before he left this world was go up the mountain and look into the land of Israel, and that was his first time getting to see the Holy Land, the land that he would not enter into, but he was at least able to lay his eyes on. And after talking to the people, the nation, for many weeks before he died, eventually he died and he was buried there. But the Torah is very specific that the place of his burial is not known, will not be known. And why is that? That's so that his burial place, his grave, doesn't become some kind of shrine, some kind of worship site. Right? He was such an important figure. He was the most important leader the Jewish people ever had. He took the people out of Egypt, right, led them to the desert. He was obviously a very, very significant figure in the life of the Israelites who traveled with him. And God didn't want his grave to turn into a worship site, which would be basically like idol worship, not in his generation and not in generations that came afterwards. So, of all the people that we learn about in the Hebrew Bible, right, we learn that his grave is not to be known. That we know the area that he was buried in. And I'll be honest with you, whenever I drive from Jerusalem down towards the area of the Jordan Valley, of the Dead Sea, you're coming down, 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 and eventually you start to see the Jordanian mountains. And I know somewhere out there, opposite from Jericho, is Moses' grave. So we can see the area where he's buried, but we just, again, don't know exactly where that grave is. Right? It's also not in Israel, but it's very, very close. It's just across the Jordan Valley in the country of Jordan. But somewhere out there is Moses' grave, and it's kind of interesting, right? It's different, right? That we know somewhere the area where he's buried, but not exactly, remains somewhat of a mystery. Unlike, again, many of the other graves that scatter, that dot the land of Israel, right? Then we can spend days, if not weeks, visiting all these different graves. Right? Moses' grave is meant to be a mystery, right? And is meant to not be a place where people can go visit. But we can obviously learn about him in the pages of the Hebrew Bible, all the different stories that relate to him. And then when and if or when you are in the area of the Dead Sea, of Jericho, of the Jordan Valley, you can look up to the mountain and say, somewhere out there, I know Moses is buried. All the best, my friends, and be well.